Alright, let's see. Who do I want to play as this time? Who haven't I cleared the game with yet? Ah, Jeff Rowley, a Liverpudlian. He'll do. I love Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and I have loved these games since the first one on the PS1. I have fond memories playing it with my friends, my brothers, with strangers at the local youth group, because everyone who liked games when I was growing up liked Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was a mainstay. My friends and I even took up skating for a couple of years. We lived in the countryside, so we had to do it on a small empty car park, being the only piece of flat tarmac we could skate on, and I wasn't very good at it to begin with, or to end with. But man, it was fun, and we probably wouldn't have done it without the games. It deserves its influential legacy. The games were anarchic fun, fast-paced, easy to pick up and play, but difficult to master. The skill ceiling rising as high as one could hold their balance as they whip across the map holding combos. There was a new one every year, adding new skaters, whole new maps to play around, and more tricks for people to pull off, making for even more complex gameplay. The Underground series even introduced a story mode, which you'd think would be totally forgettable in a game about skateboarding, but there's an entire generation of people out there whose blood will boil when I show them Eric Sparrow. However, times change. The series couldn't keep its momentum forever. There was a new game every year from 1999 to 2010, and that's only if we count Tony Hawk Motion for the DS, which I didn't even know existed until this video. The last game made by the original developers Neversoft, Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, was released in 2007. Neversoft would then be thrown into Activision's newest yearly hotness, Guitar Hero, before that well also dried up, and being put to work with Activision's next favourite hotness, Call of Duty, merging with Infinity Ward. I'm seeing a pattern here. There were efforts to keep the Tony Hawk game franchise alive, though none terribly successful after Neversoft left. The Guitar Hero boom brought the idea of having a skateboard controller with Tony Hawk Ride and Tony Hawk Shred, which was expensive and not received well at all. There was a HD remake of the first game, but fans weren't happy with it, lacking features from later games in the series like reverts and modes like Horse. It just made it feel like a step backward. And you only have to search Tony Hawk HD physics on YouTube to realize the game didn't feel how it should. There was also Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 in 2015, a cynically produced, unfinished mess rushed out by Activision because their license with the brand was expiring. I don't even want to talk about this, but this was the last major title in the franchise for years. According to Wikipedia, it still is. It's ugly, fundamentally broken with terrible design decisions, and this was apparently the last send-off for the series. This would be its goodbye. There were a lot of bad games that came out in 2015, like Devil's Third, Godzilla, and Alone in the Dark Illumination. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 stands among them, and I couldn't fault anyone who would argue that this game was even worse than them. And so, the franchise went to bed. There was a mobile game sporting Tony Hawk's name that was made without Activision, but it's not the same, man. Fans had to accept that their favourite franchise was now gone. But then a miracle happened. It came back. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 was released in 2020, and it was the perfect love letter to fans who had spent years longing for something new to play. Yes, it was another remake, but the quality of it far outshone the old HD game. The game was developed by Vicarious Visions, who had just delivered the acclaimed Crash Bandicoot N. Sane trilogy, highly polished remakes of the original Crash games, and Pro Skater 1 and 2 was receiving the exact same love and care.
Me feel like I have to go.
The studio was actually already familiar with the series, having developed a lot of the handheld versions of previous titles. I don't know how many of the team working on this also worked on those, but It doesn't matter. The level of understanding on display in this title was shocking. It takes every map and every skateboarder, apart from Spider-Man for licensing reasons, from the first two games and gives them a full makeover for the new hardware. It even brought back many songs from the original game's soundtrack from bands and artists like Goldfinger, Naughty by Nature, Primus, and the Dead Kennedys, and added newer songs that I think fit in fantastically, like Billy Talent and Alex Leahy. I can't play any of that though, so enjoy me putting on whatever is on in the background instead.
I love it.
But how does the game actually play? Fantastically, that's how. It may be going off the first two titles' skate parks, but it keeps the tricks from later iterations like reverts and wall plants to make the game feel up to date, even fresh as you explore new ways to engage with these locations. You can't get off your board like in Underground, but it'd probably break the design of hitting objectives if you could just run everywhere. The game's campaign mode is structured just like the originals, where you're tasked with completing several objectives while under a time limit. You don't have to beat all of them at once in one run. You can get them all in separate attempts, so you can get the high score in one run and the collectibles in another, etc, etc. Hit a certain amount of objectives, you unlock a new park to play around with. It's simple, maybe a bit too simple for some, and maybe also a bit repetitive, especially on objectives that turn the whole map into a scavenger hunt. But hey, you barely need to give me a reason to go skate. Moment to moment, the game feels excellent, smooth, responsive, and precise. The UI is clean, easy to read. I know how well I'm doing at any time and how close I am to losing my balance. I can do double and triple flips, special moves, switch up my grinds and my manuals mid-combo to boost my score tremendously as I play, hit gaps by tricking on or over certain parts of the map, and it all works and flows tremendously. This game becomes what I fire up for a few minutes now and then just to feel good, because it just feels fun to play in the context of doing these challenges or just skating around by myself. The pleasure response is immediate. From the moment I bust that first trick in a run to hearing the ever euphoric special move sound. It has cool extras too, like Creator Park coming back, which the developer and the community has embraced. Multiplayer is here, online and offline. There is also a whole progression system, which seems neat at first, though I'd say to put it out of your mind for the most part. The path to 100% completion in this game isn't dissimilar to Crash 4. Just play the game to have fun. You don't need a platinum trophy. All of this added up to a fantastic package that was critically acclaimed, a shocking turnaround from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, and sales matched. 1 million copies in 2 weeks made it the fastest selling entry in the entire franchise. For any long dormant series, this would be considered a miracle. Returning with a game that sees critical and financial success would surely be enough to revive Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, with a remaster of some of the other titles, or even an entirely new game. And then it didn't. We have no more games. And Vicarious Visions is no more. Vicarious Visions had been working with Blizzard on a remaster of Diablo 2 for a few years. Understandable that Blizzard might need some help after the utter disaster that was Warcraft 3 Reforged. Activision decided in 2021 that Vicarious Visions should be folded into Blizzard to continue working on the remaster and also the then upcoming Diablo 4. Despite being promised autonomy initially, this was reneged on quickly, and in 2021, the studio lost its name, becoming now Blizzard Albany, and we can only assume their old officers work on Diablo 4 content to this day. Vicarious Visions was working on remaking Pro Skater 3 and 4 according to Tony Hawk himself. However, that got thrown out the window when they were forced to merge with Blizzard. Activision did apparently explore other developers taking over, but according to Hawk, they just didn't really trust anyone the way they did Vicarious. If only they were still around, huh? I want to stress I'm not seething in gamer rage about this, thinking Activision is some big dumb baby smashing its toys together and crying when they break. I know why this happened. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater may have made money, may have been successful, but Activision looked at its spreadsheets and figured it could make more money by throwing Vicarious at one of its tentpole companies like Blizzard. It's a practice Activision is very familiar with. Raven Software was a well-loved developer who made the Star Wars Jedi Knight games, Hexen, Heretic, Singularity, and more. But that all stopped when Activision took the developer and made them a support studio for Call of Duty after 2010, where they have remained to this day. It would have other studios work on supporting the $30 billion franchise too, at one point declaring all studios they owned were working on Call of Duty. This was what was happening to Vicarious Visions before they managed to do the Crash and Tony Hawk remakes. Liam Robertson of Did You Know Gaming did a fantastic video talking about a cancelled Donkey Kong game that the studio was working on, that also examines how Activision didn't care to let VV be free and making any projects of their own. Even Crash Bandicoot's remake trilogy more or less only happened because of Sony wanting timed exclusivity, with Activision having little interest in funding it itself. I'll put that video in the description below. Come in to hear about the cancelled Monkey game, and stay to hear about Activision's executive Iraq War torture advocates. No, really. Getting folded into Blizzard and being put to work on Diablo content was just an alternate path to the same goal for Activision. Why make things to make money when you can put all your effort in trying to make all the money in the world? I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and if you've been keeping up with a lot of the bigger gaming news stories this year, you can probably see why. Layoffs abound across the industry as companies seek to reorganize and restructure, often among periods of record profits. I could not cover all of these stories without turning this video depressingly long, as well as depressing, but I do want to talk about the sheer blind rigidity that the industry seems to be in, and how disheartening it is to see as people lose their jobs and their efforts aren't even allowed to bear fruit. Firstly, with The Last of Us multiplayer. 2 years ago, I made a video sharing my love for the fun multiplayer mode for The Last of Us. At this point, we knew a standalone version of the multiplayer that was cut out of The Last of Us Part 2 was being made, and in the video, I expressed some hope that it would be a simple multiplayer game, and wouldn't take too many live service elements like battle passes and what have you. The original game was just a simple multiplayer mode after all, and people still engage with it today. I need to admit that I expressed this hope knowing deep down it would almost inevitably turn out to be a live service bonanza. I'm not naive. Anyone can see the way this industry moves. And Sony's been very vocal about wanting multiple live service hits. Yes, more than one. Helldivers 2 will not sate their appetites. So then we got promised a big game, bigger than the original simpler game, but then it turned out Naughty Dog was probably biting off more than it could chew. Bungie conducted a review of the project while it was being made to assist Naughty Dog, and found the game lacking, questioning ND's ability to keep players engaged in the long term. And if Bungie is worried about you delivering and keeping players satisfied, you're in big trouble. Naughty Dog restructured in October 2023, and the project was put on ice, officially being cancelled in December. Naughty Dog said in their statement of its cancellation that they realised the project was too big, and they would need to pour in the whole studio's resources to support the game for years after it launches. You know, like what a live service game does. Did they not plan for this? So we had two paths in front of us. Become a solely live service game studio, or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. This part of the announcement saw some celebration, and I understand that. I support not turning creative studios into content mills for endlessly updating, emotionally manipulative skin-in-a-box experiences, but I think that statement puts forward a very narrow viewpoint. Why did it have to be a live service title? For years, games used to have a multiplayer mode alongside their single-player campaign, or even just be multiplayer only. Then come out, and that was it, with no expectation of getting new content long into the future. They might get a few new maps and weapons, but in a structured release after the fact, maybe several months down the line. An example of this would be The Last of Us. People are still playing that game, enjoying it, and were looking forward to this, but its ambitions to make a live service title made it crumble. So why did it have to be, instead of say making a new version of the old multiplayer with Part 2's more updated mechanics? Easy, because live service games sometimes make the most money. Why make things to make money when you can put all your effort in trying to make all the money in the world? And all that effort ended up leading to no game at all. Naughty Dog would suffer even more cutbacks as Sony sought to lay off 900 workers across PlayStation earlier this year, including at Naughty Dog. This is despite PlayStation making billions in revenue, but hey, the line has to keep going up, right? This is the incident that made me think of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater again and what happened to Vicarious Visions. But since then, there's been a non-stop reminder of this coming out from the industry. EA had a restructure this year, affecting Motive, who made the frankly fantastic remake of Dead Space last year, and while they're still making an Iron Man game apparently, they were looking to do a new game after Dead Space. Rumours said they were going to remake Dead Space 2, but according to Jason Schreier, that was only an idea that was never greenlit. Instead, they wanted to make something original. But after the restructure, they're now working on supporting Battlefield, EA's biggest non-sport franchise, alongside other studios such as Ripple Effect and Criterion, who are already assisting. Hey, does this sound familiar? Really hope that Iron Man game works out for you guys. Seriously. Respawn Entertainment was also working on a Star Wars FPS. However, it too was cancelled amidst EA's restructuring, as EA wanted to focus on its own franchises, and massive open worlds, and live services. It's worth noting the live service graveyard that these companies are marching towards, but despite a history of failures, and people voicing loudly that they do not want these, they will continue to. Helldivers 2 made it after all, so clearly the model has to work. Blindly chase the one success and ignore everyone else who failed to make it. Same as it ever was. And then there was the big news from Xbox that it would be closing several of its studios, notably Arcane Austin, the developer of Prey, a well-loved game whose sales were sabotaged by Bethesda's insistence on using a franchise name that had nothing to do with the game they were making, and had bad blood around it anyway due to different malicious practices by Bethesda. Then they were forced to make a live service game that the studio did not want to make, all in pursuit of perceived profit. I don't blame Arcane for Redfall. The suits wanted their own version of Destiny, and they were going to throw someone under the bus to get it. But Tango Gameworks also closed, who released Hi-Fi Rush last year to great reviews. I loved that game. So much so, I cleared my schedule to make a video recommending it. It was one of the best of last year. It won awards. Microsoft even called it a success. And Tango Gameworks' reward was everyone losing their jobs. There's been a fair bit of speculation and reports on why on earth they did this, but Microsoft's own Matt Booty tells it best in his initial statement. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games. Why make things to make money when you can put all your effort in trying to make all the money in the world? The larger gaming industry is a depressing sight right now. Chasing trends is the norm, and projects have been asked to fit in with what executives think will sell since forever. But now we're at the point where working on a good game that sells well isn't enough for the endless growth machine. And it's the boots on the ground workers who suffer the consequences and lose their jobs. It's unjust. And unfortunately, it's the system working as designed.
You're fired. Fired? Oh, should have used the flamethrower. Better well, there's always next time.
Me and you, we're too small to really do anything about this, but I don't just want to repeat sad news to recount and describe the broken pieces of this car crash of an industry. Games matter. They are art and deserve to be celebrated as such, even amidst such crushing times. My words might be small and pathetic amidst the very real consequences of mass layoffs and company closures. But at the very least, I think it's worth saying that the work these people did across many years had an impact. Tango Gameworks' closure drew ire for what was seen to be an absolutely unjust move by Microsoft, and fans were vocal amidst that, taking to Steam and review bombing the game. Not negatively, but positively, thanking Tango for the great work that they achieved. Microsoft clearly doesn't care, so negative reviews would be pointless. So instead, the players show their gratitude to the creative and talented people who made something they love. Arcane Austin's final game may not have been what anyone wanted it to be, but despite slow sales, Prey has shaped up to be an endlessly talked about cult hit. We're in a world where immersive sims are being made by teams big and small, and developers are citing it as an influence on their work. Respawn Entertainment, I don't have to mention how many people want another FPS game from them, as the cries from Titanfall 2 fans are already deafening. A game also sabotaged by blind studio executives, but loved by its fans, who have kept the candle burning for Titanfall even amidst hackers and server issues. Motive developed a killer remake of Dead Space, showing just how much love they had for the old game, and it was received with just as much love from fans. It is a genuinely fantastic game, and despite being personally ambivalent to superhero stuff, I am interested in their Iron Man game because of it. Armored suits flying around, these aren't totally dissimilar. The Last of Us multiplayer launched in 2013, and while the PS3 servers are now closed, the PS4 game still has players, still has people fighting and having fun together. Yeah, there are a few old hackers and exploiters hiding around amidst these ignored old ruins, but you can still load it up and have some fun. The community is still sharing highlights and jokes with one another too, even if we never got that follow-up. I already spent a whole chapter of this video telling you how great Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 is, and there's nothing that corporate ghouls with greedy claws can do to change that. One day the online might not work, but the community will never let the flame die. When the Tony Hawk franchise slept, the PC version of Tony Hawk's Underground 2 became a hotbed for the modding community, with the Thug Pro mod importing maps and skateboarders and adding functionality for a game that is now 20 years old. It's still being updated, and they've been doing this since 2013. The party kept on going for the people who liked these games, and when the community heard we weren't going to get a remaster of Pro Skater 3 and 4, they said, okay, we'll do it ourselves. THPS Pro seeks to do the same thing for the new remaster, importing the maps we would have gotten if Vicarious Visions got to do what they, and what we, wanted. It's early, but still being worked on by a community who love what they do and will keep this from being forgotten. There are valuable people within this industry who do not deserve to feel that what they did was a footnote in a sales chart, whose talents were regarded with only a hand wave from some top floor suit. People like Jen O'Neill. Jen was the former studio head at Vicarious Visions, but moved to Blizzard when the developer was merged. This was around the time that Activision Blizzard was making headlines for discriminating against its female employees. And would you believe it, Jen found she was making less than her male colleagues in the same role, and ended up resigning the same year she joined. She and other former Blizzard members have made their own studio called Magic Soup Games, where she is CEO, or rather, head chef. It feels like every week there is a new story about a studio being founded by former developers of some big team, and there is a reason for that. The turnover rate for those working in the games industry has been bad even before the horrendous couple of years we've been in, which makes it clear the very top regards even its most skilled workers as expendable. It's important that these people know that this isn't true, and whatever new venture they go towards, attention is paid to the creatives who actually made these games. It's maybe only a small consolation amidst very real consequences for people's lives, but they deserve to be told that what they made mattered, and touched and struck a chord with people around the world. All these human beings who put their everything into creating something deserve to be told, thank you. Thank you. It's the least that should be done.
We somehow made it through all of this. Making things is hard, things never go as planned. Too many features, not enough time. We want the best, but can only do so much with what we have. So this is what we made. We've never been more proud. A game, a song, a million different pieces working together. Brought to you by all of us. It may not be what you expected. Everything that you wanted. But we did our best, and here it is, a piece of our heart, the hard work from all of us. So please don't complain, and just enjoy, because at the end of the day, it's all just a game. One we spent thousands and thousands of hours arguing, building and polishing. But hey, no sweat.
Thank you for joining me in this microtherapy session, or perhaps a jumbo session for me, considering how much time I put into this. Still feels like more could be done, but this is a topic that's way bigger than me. Maybe it can be revisited somewhere down the line. Thank you as always to my patrons, helping me make videos which usually aren't so depressing. Patrons get access to updates on what I'm making, and can ask questions and Q&A segments at the end of videos, which we'll get into right now. What was some of your favourite music growing up, and what is some of your favourite music to listen to now? A lot of my early taste came from Tony Hawk games, though I did like Eminem and Linkin Park leading up to high school. Then I got into classic rock, and that slowly morphed into me adoring progressive rock. If your song is 12 minutes long and has a phantom trumpet coming in and out of it, that's my jam. What do you do to combat burnout? Great question. I'll let you know when I have an answer. I've been pretty bad for burning myself out on certain projects, but I haven't been doing this as work for that long, so I'm still working things out. Now that you've revisited the epic highs and lows of video game skateboarding, how would you rate the skating mechanics in Kingdom Hearts 2? I got really good at the Kingdom Hearts 2 skateboard. Or as good as you can get. Mostly because I had to ace the Twilight Town jobs board before I could move on every time I've played it. Anyway, I give it a C+. It's quicker than walking, and doesn't control horrendously, but it's no Spyro 3. Favourite skate trick? Gonna go with nostalgia and say the 900. There may be more impressive and crazier tricks out there, but seeing the video of it being done blew my mind as a kid. And I liked how hard it was to pull off in the original game at first too. The video of Tony Hawk doing the 900 for the final time, and finally making it, and just immediately walking out of the room, I don't know, it hits me in some way. Maybe because I'm 30 years old on the day of this upload now? Yay! Thank you all for watching. The next video will be on the Steam Next Fest in June, where we can support and shout out some more talented people. I'll see you then.